Hello students, I hope your week is going well. This week we are going to talk about photosynthesis and plants. It has a lot to do with energy transfer like we've been talking about, a lot to do with energy. So we're just going to progress right into the life science stuff. If you have any questions about what we have to do this week, remember, first reread the directions that I post on Google Classroom, and then if you still don't understand what's going on, feel free to send me an email. But always read the directions. A lot of time your answer is in there. But if you really need something answered right away, I'm usually able to answer my email pretty quickly. So let's get started here. So today we are going to focus on photosynthesis in plants and how that's related to energy transfer and all that good stuff. So let's see what we got going on here. Some of you remember that episode of SpongeBob where he does photosynthesis. That'd be pretty funny to include here. So a good question to start with is, how exactly do plants get their energy? Well, plants get their energy through a process called photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is simply the process by which plants and other organisms like algae and things like that create food with water and air and sunlight. So they take water and air and they take the energy from sunlight and they create sugar, and that's the food that gives them their energy. If you look at the picture here, it shows sunlight and carbon dioxide, which is air, and water all going into the plant. And in the plant it says carbohydrates, which are sugars here, and out comes oxygen. And this picture basically just shows an example of what's going on with photosynthesis. Okay, so you might be saying, I've heard of photosynthesis, but I don't know exactly how it works. Well, plants take in carbon dioxide here. You can find carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Water, just from rain or groundwater, something like that. So carbon dioxide and water, and they take the energy from sunlight and they turn it into glucose. Glucose is just a fancy word for a simple sugar. And they also have a byproduct of oxygen, which is really, really nice for us as humans because we use oxygen in respiration and to breathe. So really simply, carbon dioxide plus water and light energy go into a plant, and the plant turns that into sugar and oxygen. Okay, so you might be wondering, where does this take place in the plant? It doesn't happen all over the place, but we're going to back up here. All living things are made of cells. If living things were like Lego sculptures, each individual Lego would be made of a cell. Your body is all made of cells. If you look at your dog, it's all made out of cells. Plants are all made out of cells. Bacteria are made out of cells. All living things are made out of cells. In these cells are little tiny things, kind of like the organs in your body, and these are called organelles. Each organelle kind of has a different job. Like your heart pumps blood in your body. There's little organs in the cells that each have their own job. Like one gets rid of the waste, one creates energy, one has all the genetic information for the cell. All of these are called organelles. So there are two main organelles that are used when you're talking about creating energy and releasing energy for the cell. These two organelles are called chloroplast, which is this green organelle on the right, and mitochondria, which is this brown orangish organelle on the left. One turns water and CO2 and sunlight into sugar, and then one turns that sugar into energy that the cell can then use. We're going to talk about these two different organelles a little bit more in depth. So let's start with the chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis takes place. Remember, photosynthesis is how plants turn sunlight, air, and water into sugar and oxygen. Okay, so This is where CO2, carbon dioxide, plus H2O, which is water, plus sunlight turns into sugar and oxygen. Okay? These parts of the cell are very green because there are green pigments in the organelle. Okay? So all these green pigments in the organelle are helping it to bring in and absorb sunlight. These green pigments are called chlorophyll. These green pigments that are in plant cells are why leaves on plants and parts of plants, the cells on plants, why plants in general are colored green, because they're green pigments. And they're only found in plant cells, right? We don't have them in our body. We're not green because we do not turn sunlight and water and carbon dioxide into sugar. We get our energy from other places. So plants and other organisms that turn sunlight and air and water into sugar, they are green because they have these green pigments in the chloroplasts, which are in their cells. Okay, so after the chloroplast has turned water, oxygen, and sunlight into sugar, you might be wondering, where does the sugar go? We haven't used any of the energy yet. We've just turned sunlight into sugar. The cell itself has not used up any energy. So where does the sugar go? Well, it goes into our next organelle that we're going to talk about, the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the organelle that releases the energy in the sugar to power the plant. You might have heard the saying, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Well, that's because that's true. It releases the energy in the chemical bonds in the sugar to help the cell live, right? The cell has to do all sorts of different things that require energy, and this is where they get the energy. They break down the sugars and they use the energy in the chemical bonds. Same in your body. The mitochondria are found in all the cells in your body, and they release the energy that you've gotten from your food that you eat so that your cells can use that, right? You need energy as well. All of your cells have mitochondria that break down carbohydrates and sugars so that you can use the energy to power your cells. So mitochondria turn sugar and oxygen, so glucose and oxygen, into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. You guys breathe out carbon dioxide and water, right? You breathe in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide and water, and you use the energy in your bodies to power your cells. So you might be ahead of me, or you might be wondering, how is this related to energy transfer? You've talked a couple times about relating this to energy transfer. That's what we've been talking about before this. How does this relate to photosynthesis in plants? Well, essentially, plants transfer the energy from the sun into chemical energy. So you have radiant energy from the sun being transferred into chemical energy in the bonds of the sugar. You can think of each bond of the atoms on the sugar. They hold a certain amount of energy, and when you break those, you release energy. Okay, so you're taking radiant energy from the sun, you're turning it into chemical energy. You're transferring the energy. Okay, that's all happening in the chloroplast. After the chloroplast turn sunlight, water, and CO2 into sugar or chemical energy, then that chemical energy is transferred into the energy that the plant uses to live. So the chemical energy could be turned into heat. It could be turned into mechanical energy, so things can move. So this is the energy plants and animals, right? We have mitochondria too. We take chemical energy and we turn it into energy that we use in our bodies and our cells. Okay, so that's how all this is related to energy transfer. Basically, we're taking energy from the sun and we're just transferring it into our cells so we can use it. Plants do this. We eat food so we can turn that energy in their chemical bonds. We put them in our mitochondria and they turn it into energy that we use. One last question that I want to leave you guys off with. I've kind of hinted to it a couple times throughout this video, but how do you get this energy, right? We don't have chloroplasts. We don't take energy from the sun and turn it into sugar, and then we have to get our energy from somewhere else, right? We have to get these sugars from other things. I want you to think about this question. How do you get this energy? Okay, where and how do you get the energy that your mitochondria break down and release as energy? Okay, that's what I want to leave you off with.